shoot a lower score.
There's one rule!
Come on.
Scott, you got another book, and we're going to be talking about ways that we might be able to implement it here in this podcast that we're about to listen to. What do you have to say about the Golfer's Playbook here?
Well, the Golfer's Playbook is the first and only notebook to take you through critical thought and reflection on your game so that you know exactly what went wrong or right in your practice, what to do about it, and how to continue to get better.
I love it. So we're going to be talking a lot in this episode about how you guys can get better, and especially talking about how you can practice better, specifically in cracking the code. But if you buy this book, you can do it anywhere in the world. So make sure to check out the Golfer's Playbook and message Scott on Instagram at @SHasseyGolf if you want to learn more. Enjoy the episode. Welcome back to Inside the Studio here at Franklin Bridge, where we just had an amazing guest on, Ryan Daly, who is the co-founder of Operation 36.
I believe that's correct.
There
He
we
and
go.
Matt, 13 years together, have been building that model.
Yeah, which we learned a lot about it, and we've got a whole podcast dedicated to it. So if you guys haven't watched the episode or listened to the episode, How to Shoot Even Par, make sure that you go and check that one out because it is just chocked full of knowledge. Whether you are a junior golfer, a entry-level golfer, somebody who's been playing golf for a long time, or a parent, I mean, it was just so baffling to me how he went on and on and on about just like he just added value in every part of the game. And I'm like, why isn't golf just buying him and
I know.
and Matt? Like, it's amazing.
Well, we are. You know, they're not cheap to use every month, but they're fantastic, and the resources that are there. It's just a matter of, you know, there's so many resources. If we just think around the world in any industry, there's so many resources, but we just don't use them. You know, it's not like we necessarily even need a new, project management tool. It's like we just need to use the ones that are there and use them well. And it's like we just keep like thinking that the tool needs to be fixed rather than the users of the tool. And they're the first ones to really build a really awesome golf app for families and juniors and helping develop culture. And it's beautiful. It's awesome.
Love it. Love it. So if you guys want to hear more about that episode, just go back and listen to it. It's amazing. But we're going to start off this episode because we got some more knowledge to share with you. So, but first of all, we want to thank our sponsors, Strixon. We trust them with our game, and they give us the best equipment to do that. And we love them a lot. So we'll talk about this in this podcast. I know I teased it in the last podcast and we never got to it. It makes more sense for this one. But I was using my Strixon Cleveland putter in a putting drill that we were doing with some juniors that were back on the putting green here at Franklin Bridge. And then I was also hitting my ZX7 irons today. And I mean, they just, when you connect with one and connect with them well, it's just butter, man. Like, I've never experienced that feeling hitting a golf ball before. And it's just, it's amazing. So thank you, Strixon, for giving us the equipment to have the best game that we can. So Strixon's awesome. The other one that we really want to touch on today,
Arccos,
which is huge, is Arccos. And Arccos is going to be the exclusive game tracking software and hardware for Cracking the Code 3.0. So I'm wearing the shirt right now. If you guys are in the Cracking the Code group, you're going to get one of these shirts, and they're awesome. They're freaking awesome. But a little bit about Arccos. I was playing with Arccos a couple weeks ago, and I actually played with them last week when I was over in South Carolina. But it's an amazing tool because what Arccos will do is detect your shots on the course. So you've got little sensors that go into the butt of your clubs. When you swing and hit the golf ball, the sensors recognize that that's a shot. And then when you get to your next shot and hit the next shot, it'll register your first one and be able to give you data from all over the course once you've finished to be able to figure out where you can improve. So one way that I can improve is my putting. And so, but I didn't know that until I went into my Arccos app and it said that my strokes gains putting was actually negative. Everything else in my bag, my irons, my wedges, and my woods, I was actually gaining strokes, but I was losing. I was losing tons of strokes in my putting, and so it really gave me the knowledge to be like, okay, I need to fix this. And so made sure that I came and did a putting drill with you and your two juniors that you were doing earlier today because I realized, thanks to Arccos, that I need to really work on that. So thank you, Arccos. If you guys want to check out Arccos, go to Arccos. I believe just Google Arccos and you'll find their website. And then you can use our promo code ONERULE15, ONERULE15. And you can get 15% off of your first purchase. So thank you, Arccos, for sponsoring the Champions Playbook and cracking the code for this winter.
Yeah, no, and one thing that's really cool about Arccos, I haven't actually talked about it yet on the podcast. I've let you do all the promoting. But there's two really awesome features for me as a teacher. The first one being you can actually see an overlay of the hole and where your shots went.
Yeah.
And I've actually been able to help players connect with and see patterns of when they tend to miss right or tend to miss left or tend to miss short. Like you can actually see certain hole design and hole features. So then that becomes an educational component about like golf course architecture and hole design, how that tends to play with your golf swing and why it messes with your swing in those areas and what to do about it. So it allows us to kind of teach you in a more complete and holistic way rather than just hitting the golf ball. So even if I'm not on the range with you or on the golf course with you or you're not out there with Elijah, by bringing that in, we can look at that information and really be incredibly helpful to give you that complete look.
The beautiful thing about Arccos too is that if you're using the software and the hardware and you play the same course multiple times, you can actually learn your tendencies because Arccos has collected all of that data on the same course. So it's amazing. So thank you, Arccos.
The other thing about it was when I was in the process of writing my first book, and this was about the time Arccos wasn't really developed yet. So as I had been working on my first book and has running classes before I ever wrote the book, I was like, what somebody needs to do one day, like we've got TrackMan and Foresight GC Quad, and we've got these like tech components where we can like know what your average shot pattern is. Can you imagine being able to like play a golf course or think about a golf course and go, okay, well, this shot is here. And imagine if it also had like wind patterns. And so you could adjust your strategy based on wind patterns. It could tell you, because I was like, well, the tech's there with that. Like I have coaches are using it in college. They'll do a printout of the golf course and they'll put north and where the wind patterns are, where the winds are at different times, because guess what? The weather apps tell you where the winds are going to be per hour and how much they're going to be. Imagine if I had that and I was playing, it could tell me what, I could know exactly what shot to hit. Well, guess what Arccos does? Once it knows your game, once you've played enough rounds, it knows the wind patterns for that day, where it is. It knows the elevation changes. It will tell you what club to hit. I had a guy during the round, it suggested he hit a certain club 3 times. He's like, there's no way I should hit this club here or hit that club there. And he said I didn't listen to it each of those times because it seemed like so out of the ordinary. Like I need to hit 2 extra clubs here, or I need to hit 2 less clubs here. He was so like, he knew the winds were there. I know the wind's there. It was wrong every time. He's like, I wish I would have listened to it. Like, yeah, it works. Like the data's there to support it, thanks to TrackMan, and like they were able to pull it all in one place. So Arccos is incredible, and the reason why I talk about it is, going off the theme of the cracking the code, which is the I want what's real, and we are in a culture, and I'm not just saying the United States. I think societally, we are in a culture where we're not consumers. I even think consumer mentality is even wrong. We want to be entertained. We don't actually want to consume. We want to be entertained. And so the problem with that is that's not actually the best thing for us as humans. Like we're meant to be thinkers. In fact, what makes man really man is the fact that we are a learning animal. And so like the ability for us to learn is tremendous. And so we've shut that component off. And so how do we know what's real? Like even when we put data into an app by hand, like, okay, I hit this many greens, I hit it to the right here, hit it to the left here, it's still not complete and unbiased. And Arccos takes away the bias. And it is exactly, here's what's real. And then when we look at cracking the code, we're doing that with everybody. I remember I told you in the podcast where I actually got the phrase, I want what's real, is when we look at your data and I go through and detail out 15 pages worth of your golf swing in each position and everything about each position that I can, It's taking me 90 minutes, by the way. I didn't say that in that podcast. It's taking me 90 minutes per, and I've got 34 of them to do. But it's been a wonderful exercise for me as a teacher, so I can see what's real, not just bring in my own bias and my own experience, but to really see it as it really is. It's also what's real for them. And so we have, as you can see here in front of me, we've got the Golfer's Playbook. Erica, who's interned here the last 3 summers, she helped design the interior. So it's a wonderful, wonderful job. And the cover's her idea too. So, but with it, it's like, how do we reflect? We don't reflect well. We don't pause. We don't stop. We don't meditate. We don't pray. We don't, we just go and entertain me. I'm going to work so I can be entertained. And even when I'm at work, I want to be entertained. We don't know how to work and just enjoy this whole process of learning. And the Golfer's Playbook really takes you through that piece by piece.
Love that. And so, of course, that was a little bit of a long ad read.
Sorry.
But hold on. But what I was going to caveat that with is it's kind of the theme of this podcast as well, and is going to be centered around cracking the code and centered around the Golfer's Playbook here. So we thank Arcos for being a sponsor, but you're probably going to hear more about them in this podcast because what they do is so relevant to
Correct.
getting better and the Golfer's Playbook here.
Yeah. And, tonight, Jack was out there with 2 of my elite juniors that are in my elite program. So we have a very small number of them intentionally. You don't get into the elites just because you are good enough and you want to be. You've got to have the work ethic, you have the right personality, the right culture, the whole deal. And these 2 young men that are out there with Jack.
For the record, I'm not in this class either.
Right. No, Jack just walked up and we were doing an exercise at the end here anyway that I wanted to make sure they knew how to do on their own. And it was after dark too, by the way. Which makes it even better. But we're doing this game, this putting game that goes around, and each time you make a putt, you advance 1. Each time you miss a putt, you come back 1. Guess where I learned this one from?
Hank?
Nope. Try again.
Op 36?
Nope.
Oh. What? I don't know.
You know the other one. It's a person.
Erica? Scott?
Nope.
Who?
Who do we have on the podcast?
Brian?
Nope.
Oh, Suai.
Yeah. They called it Annika. And so for Annika Sorenstam. So they called it Annika, but it's from 3 feet all the way to 12 feet. Now, we didn't have the time to go that far, so I only put it to 10 feet.
Hey, I was on the 11-foot putt.
I know. You got
I
got pretty
there.
far.
I could have gotten there.
It was really good. But each time you make 1, you advance. Each time you miss 1, you come back 1. So it's a make 1, go up, miss 1, come back. And good putters get out of that 3, 4, and 5 foot range really fast. They don't stay down in those short putts. They get into the 6 to 8 and they kind of hang there. Well, everybody got into the 7/8s, but not everybody was able to get and stay there. They get there and they come all the way back and they just hung down these bottom putts. And these 2 junior golfers are better than Jack from a scoring standpoint on the golf course. And both of them are in high school. One's a junior, one's a freshman. And it's just fun to watch because early on they outpaced Jack and then they kept falling back. They weren't catching the nuance of what their error was. And so I just letting them fail. That's just what I'm doing. And Jack is just cruising, and then he passes by him and stays out ahead of him. And Jack starts hanging out between 7 and 10 feet, and they're just hanging in that 5-6, 5-6, 5-6, make 7, miss 6, miss 5, hit 4, go back to 3, miss a 3, do push-ups because they missed a 3-footer. And like that kind of little trap that they got in, they kind of got hung down in that bottom spot. But the point was, I looked at him at the end, I said, look, who won the thing? I'm like, well, Jack, obviously. I was like, yes, I'm not doing that to make you feel bad. I want you to learn something. Are you better golfers than Jack? Yes. Is that proven time and time again in your scores? Yes.
Not for long.
Not for long. Now that Jax is armed with Arcos, he knows to work on his putting. But they learned 2 things. Mindset was 1. Jack's mindset was not afraid of going back. It was, I'm going to get to the end, especially as you got a taste of the longer putts. You're like, if you missed one, you're like, I want to get back over there. There was no thought of I don't want to go back here. And that's one of the places they're at, right? They're still learning. It's just learning how to flip that into I'm getting over there. And 2 is they kept missing the putts on the same side of the hole, on the low side. And one of the things that people do poorly is awareness. And this is a statement of experience of me teaching. Juniors are better at solving these problems than adults are. Adults can't see the same error that these juniors did, generally speaking. And so what I want them to see is that the only piece that they were missing is they need to play more break on their putts. That's it. But they didn't do it. They'd play like just a tiny bit, maybe more, or what they thought might be a little more, but they were so afraid of missing on the other side that they didn't go to the other side. And in learning and what we're doing with Cracking the Code 3.0 is I'm literally breaking everybody down to the rawest, most foundational principles from setup, and then I am teaching them every position. And you know me, I am not a position teacher. But I am taking them through controlling a basic position and increasing their awareness. This is how weak the adult's awareness has been. So I've run, 1, 2, 3, 4. Is that right? 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah, I've done 4 classes so far, 16 adults. The first assignment is to stop the club horizontal to the ground, which is roughly waist high or sometimes a little lower than that when it meets horizontal to the ground, right? So your hands haven't gone above your waist. Said, I want you to stop here. I showed it to him multiple times. A couple of times I put a student there before we ever did it as a group. I want you to stop right there. That's position number 1. How many adults actually stopped right at position 1 out of the 16?
Probably like 1.
0.
Okay, yeah.
You wanted to say
it was
you
1
wanted
or
to
0.
say 0. I could tell you wanted to say 0.
You learn in school never to like go with absolutes. It's like
literally not a 1. They all swung past that. I was like, okay, really basic command. You didn't stop it there. All right, stop it right there. How'd they do on the next try? Like 2 or 3 out of the 16 stopped it there. I was like, what? This is, and you wonder why you don't get better when you play. You can't even control a most basic exercise of I want you to stop the club horizontal. I haven't even asked you to do it right or wrong. Like I don't even care if it's done the wrong way. It's not horizontal to the ground. And so they're not controlling their bodies. And so
the funny thing is though, is that it's not even a matter of that club position is so important. It's the principle of being able to do it.
Bingo. The principle of controlling where my body is. I'm in charge of where my body goes. I've been watching some Cesar Millan,
the dog whisperer.
And the reason why I'm getting so hooked on it right now is not because of the dogs and not because of, some of the ridiculous characters of the adults, but he's an incredible teacher on leadership.
He's a behavioralist in a lot of ways.
Absolutely incredible.
And what's crazy is
For
not
the
just
dog
for
and the
dogs,
human,
for the human too. Yeah.
Well, that's the whole thing is like he understands what leadership is and what it requires and how that looks a little bit different for, dogs versus humans. And so, it's, it's just really cool to watch the leadership of that. And one of the things is teaching them like, well, we're just struggling again. We were doing great at the ranch. We come back, we're just struggling. It's like, no, you just stop doing what he asked you to do. And like, you bring him back. He doesn't give him anything new. We do the same thing. It's just like a reminder to do it. And it just shows how weak we are, which I think is humbling. We are really weak as people. And we need reminders from other people and other resources to be like, stop it right here. And so for the juniors, the talking point at the end was like, the only thing that separated Jack from them, now your technique is really good in your putting right now too. So like his technique was right where theirs is. And so it's something you could definitely compete in. And 2 was, it's just, you had a different mindset. I'm going to get there. And when you got up there and you fell off it, how am I going to get back there? And you adjusted. You made the adjustment. And then once you made the adjustment for that hole, you didn't make the error again.
Here's another thing too that I think was really interesting, and I didn't even realize it until we were walking back here to the studio to start the podcast, is that you mentioned Tiger, and you said, man, if I could pick Tiger's brain for 5 minutes, one of the questions that I would ask him is, how many tournaments did you win with like your D- game? because we talked about you just got to play with what you got sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think one thing that might have been different for me versus one of the other gentlemen who was doing it with me, he was like, well, I'm also fighting this, this slight slight push motion that I have with my putter. And I was thinking, I'm not even thinking about that when I'm putting. Like, I'm just like, all right, that's where the break is, and I just got to hit it there. Like, I'm not thinking, because what I'm thinking that he's doing is being like, all right, I'm pushing, so I got to compensate by making sure my face is straight, and then now I'm not worried about the break, and now I'm missing putts because of all that stuff. And I think my mindset when I was doing this, I didn't even realize that they were there after I passed them, to be completely honest.
Right.
Like, I was just zoned in,
me,
but
yeah.
I was just thinking. All I was thinking the entire time is, all right, let me set my line, and then let me make sure I put a decent amount of pace to be able to get it to the hole or get it to where I need to be. And so I'm curious, in your observation of them, do you think they were trying to think about too many things? Because I don't think there's anything special about what I did. I was just trying to make the putts at the end of the day.
Well, I think there's two things. I think one is they're not sure what to be aware of.
Got it, yeah.
And how do I put it together? Like, you should be both aware of your motion, controlling your motion, and you also need to be aware of where you're aiming and what your alignment is. And then you also need to be aware of, number 3 would be to be aware of making strategic decisions in putting. People think, I don't need strategy in putting. I'm not going to go into that here, but like, there's a ton of strategy involved in putting, even if you are putting bad. And so, to the young man's point, he was asking like about my stroke. It's like, it's your stroke, but it's also your strategy. You're not making a good strategic decision either. So, like, you're compounding your error. And like, if you would impart, and here the funny part is, his motion went pulled to the left with the shaft, which actually made him push it, held the face open. And so, guess what happens? The more he aims, the less break he plays on that left to right putt.
The more aggressive that push gets.
The more he pulls his body, he keeps trying to pull that handle left, which actually makes the face open more.
Yeah, and he pushes. Yep.
And so it's a weird, funny dichotomy. It's like, hey man, if you'd actually aim more to the left, you actually would make a better stroke. And so that's the level of awareness that I'm trying to take these boys to, and we'll add some girls next year most likely that are in the pre-elites. But like, that's the level of awareness they have to get to, is like, you have to be able to solve your problem. Kind of to Ryan's point, like, I partly need to make you aware of the fact that you have a problem, but I also need to let you just kind of sit in your struggle and realize, hey man, it's not working. It's not working. It's not working. Change something. You know what to change. Change it. And I made that subtle point to both of them. I was like, hey, you both need to play a little more break. And they did it for like 1 or 2 putts, and then they stopped doing it.
What's different, too, that I really want to highlight as well is that what I was waiting for them to do, and again, I'm not saying that I'm any better than them. I'm actually worse than them. What I was waiting for them to do is I even made a little offhanded comment when I was, like, consistently above them. And I was basically like, come on, guys, come get me kind of thing. I was waiting for them to stop thinking about how they can start making these putts and just focus on beating me. Because a lot of the times when you just focus on beating somebody, or at least this is my experience, I'll just fix whatever needs to be fixed just to get there. I'm not going to think about it. I'm just going to get there. I'm going to do it. And so I was waiting for them to go into competitor mode rather than analyzation mode.
Well, it's funny. I have 2 brothers-in-law that were both incredible tennis players, and they are incredible ping pong players.
Oh, yeah, of course you got to bring up ping pong. I know you're good at ping pong.
And I'm really good at it. And I get the several times I played the first, usually I only get to play one game when the whole family's together. So it's not like you get to stand in one spot and play like 6 games and kind of figure it out. It's like, if you don't figure it out and play in one game against each person, then you're kind of done for the evening. But when I finally got some one-on-one time with them, I'm like, I'm tired of losing. I'm losing every time. I'm getting smoked, and I don't get smoked in ping pong. And so what I had to do was like, all right, I am not going to lose. Like, I'm just going to decide not to lose anymore. And I went with a different strategy. I just was more patient. I have enough skill to at least get it back instead of trying to be aggressive with them. Let them make the mistake, or at least build where I can build a little more confidence in my motion, where I can then pick when to be aggressive. And I was able to hang with them and finally win once or twice. Now, they're still better than me, and I'm still going to get beat, but now I can be competitive. And so, like, you're right. I didn't think about that. Like, that makes a lot of sense. Your comment there was very intentional. It wasn't about you being arrogant. It was about getting them to like, hey, like, flip that switch. Be competitive. Stop losing. People are like, well, how do I swing faster? Swing faster. How do I, how do I stop missing putts? Start making them.
And that's why I love playing with Elijah and
Make
why
it matter.
Right, exactly.
Do anything to make the putt.
Do it all.
Pay attention.
That's one of the freeing things about me playing golf now is that I've only been doing this for less than 3 years.
Yeah.
And so it's fun for me because I can push myself more than I've ever been able to push myself before. So if I'm like sitting on the couch playing a video game that I'm really good at and somebody else comes and wants to play with me and wants to, try and play with me, I'll play down to that level because I don't want to beat you. Like I don't want to beat you really bad.
Right.
There's like the empathy in me, and I don't know if that's like comes off arrogant or not, but it's like I've got so much empathy that I just want everybody to have a good time. But the freeing thing about me being a new golfer is that I'll perform as well as I can. And if I'm beating you, it's a measuring stick for me to be like, oh hell yeah, I'm doing well. Like I can consistently have people better than me that I can end up chasing, and I think that is where a lot of improvement has come for me personally.
Well, and you're not intimidated by getting beat. Like, that getting beat is actually a learning opportunity for you to continue to get better. And you mentioned to the boys, which I thought was really cool that you did this to them, was like, you got to play with Austin when he shot the course record here, and Micah shot the course record right before Austin did.
I know, it was crazy.
Right. It was like, boom,
Micah
boom.
and Austin were playing together in that round. It was you, me, or you were watching. Or were you playing?
I was playing.
Okay, it was me and my buddy. We might have played a 5-some, but we were playing so quick it didn't matter.
Austin,
Micah.
It was poor weather that day, and I was doing some teaching and some playing here and there.
But it was Austin, Micah, you, me, and my buddy Kyle.
Yeah, and it's like you had mentioned to the two young men this evening. You said, I'm not as good, but I'm going to put myself around people and be challenged because, like, I want to learn. And it doesn't feel good to shoot 89 when you've got, 72, 73 from me, 65 from Micah, and 63 from Austin. It's just like, goodness, I'm getting lapped. And you start to think, like, I kind of don't even, like, I feel like I'm holding everybody back. Like, but you use that as a place for you to, like, then ask questions and then learn. And, like, people that get better at anything ask questions. They don't do it on their own. The whole self-made man thing is just total nonsense.
The only caveat that I would add to that point is that I think you have to have a certain mindset in order to play with like elite players too. And again, I'm not trying to pump my tires or anything, but one of the gentlemen who was putting with us, he would miss a putt and go like, gosh, I missed the putt. Like I missed it. Like and you kept on correcting him, being like, no, you missed the putt. Like that's it.
It's
that's
just
it. It's
putt,
just a
man.
putt, right? But you can't be somebody you can't play with Austin Jean and be one of those people who are like, man, like this never happens to me. Like I never play this bad. Like you can't do that. You got to really play with those people and have a growth mindset while you're doing it. And that's why I think cracking the code is so beneficial. Cracking the code and Op36 are so beneficial because it builds confidence for you to be able to say, you know what, like didn't play well today, but like I know that more is coming.
Yeah.
I know that
it's funny because I've gotten the questions, and I had a guy come up and mention something today. It's like, I played with my buddies today, and like, I really did really poorly in some of these areas, and like, but when I did it right, when I did the movement I was trying to do, and I did it well, it worked. And like, keep in mind, their assignment is to do only slow motion swings and positioned swings where the ball's going 20 yards. Like, we are breaking them down that far. And they keep bringing up this, like, yeah, I'm playing with, but who cares about your, like, don't sign up for this program if you care about what your buddies are going to think about you. Because guess what? They're gonna beat on you tooth and nail for the next 2 months while I break you all the way down and then build you up. But when you come out in March, April, May, you're going to be so far past them, they're going to be like, well, how do I get in and do what you do? It's like, hey, bro, you got to put yourself through misery for 4 months. And Scott's not offering that program again until November.
And it's so cool too because this principle is not something that's new. Like
No.
it's, I mean, think about
Martial arts does it all the time.
martial arts. I'm more thinking about the Navy SEALs.
Oh, yeah.
That first week, that hell week,
Yep.
that's meant to break you down and test your mindset. And then everything after that, like after you have to do your water class and then your demolition class and your arms class, like that is the program is very transparent. That is one of the easier parts of SEAL training. If you can get through Hell Week, that is really testing your mental. And I think that's what cracking the code does. And I think that's what these
hell for 4 months.
Exactly. And I think that's what these elite junior programs are doing as well, is it's breaking them down so much that then when you have a failure in the future, when you're better, it arms you to not think on it too much.
And what I'm getting to show people is, if we take Ryan, this is so cool. These all are kind of tying together in kind of neat ways, unintentionally. But as Ryan was mentioning, like, we need to see progress, right? I need to see that I can improve. And you've got 22 handicaps. I can tell you, it's a 22 handicap. People don't feel like they have any control over anything as a 22 handicap. But hey, guess what? You controlled position 1. You learned how to control position 1. And they're like, it doesn't matter. I was like, it matters way more than you're giving it credit for.
So much, yeah.
It matters because what you're doing is saying, I am in command of my body here. I can be in command of my body here. I can be in command of my body here. Boom, boom. If you can command those positions, you can control anything. You can control it at full speed. But, like, you can't control it at full speed. Why do you think you control, like, if you can't control it, you can't do the most basic task with no speed and no outcome of no ball being hit, anything, then you can't control it at full motion with a ball, with pressure, with trees around you.
That's one of the things that I think that I actually have on my side is coming from a baseball background. I've never understood how people, especially in cracking the code, like have so much trouble with like a backswing and a forward swing. And to me, like I've definitely gone through enough lessons to refine my swing so much. But I'm like, how do you not know how to, take it back 3 feet? And I realize too that I'm blessed with the ability to play a sport that has a lot of those feels built into it. But if you're somebody new, going through this class can be super beneficial because not only does this build confidence and break you down, but it also teaches you how to feel in the most broken down, manageable ways that you can, which I think is so valuable, especially for somebody who's never done a swinging sport.
Yeah. Well, and one of the other books I'm having them read is Mastery by George Leonard, which I've talked about.
So good.
But I'm not just letting them read the book. I want you to read chapters 4, 7, and 8. 4 is about loving the plateau, where you're just working and there's no progress.
That is so good, yeah.
That's the first chapter they have to read. I'm not even letting them read the introduction 1 through 3. Like, you start at chapter 4, living and loving being on the plateau and just learning. Like, it's just learning. That's all it is. You feel like you're making no progress. Like, I'm just learning. The chapter 7 is one of the 5 key principles that they have of mastery. And there's 1 and 2. So I'm skipping principles 1 and 2, and I go straight to principle 7, or principle 3. In chapter 7, and it's this: surrender. So you can see where I'm trying to hit them, and like they're still not fully surrendering. I was like, let go, like let me. Oh my gosh, this just seems like so much and so overwhelming. It's like, I know it is. I'm intending it to be that way, because guess what? You want to shoot 10 shots lower. You don't have control over the most basic skill to get 10 shots lower. Let's get control. Let's learn how to control our body. We're just kind of, I don't know, I feel like we're in a culture that's just like, wherever the wind and waves push me, it's all fate. And, I believe there's a God who's in control of all the things, and like there's purpose to everything, and there are some things we just don't get to decide at all. But in the same token, like, we do get a choice. Change it. Well, it just feels like it's not going to hit it anywhere. I was like, I get that. And the 2 boys I had, we did slow motion swings today with them, and they couldn't hit more than 50 yards. And they feel this desire to just want to hit it as you come down. I was like, that means you're letting your desires control you rather than you being in command of those desires. Like, don't let your instincts take over. Control. gain control, gain control. I mean, it sounds like Mr. Miyagi, right? Like wax on, wax off. But it's all about movement. That's all it is at the end of the day. And there happens to be a golf club at the end of it and a ball that gets struck somewhere, and we hit it a bunch of times and add it up, and you got yourself a score. Like,
well, and that's the beautiful thing too about mastery. And when you look at, gosh, I mean, just look at anybody. Look at Roger Federer. Look at Albert Pujols. Look at Tiger Woods. What do all these people have in common? Well, number one, they're all swinging sports, so I'll give them that. But number two, they know how to control these most like finite movements. And how have they learned how to do that? Thousands, millions of repetitions to where they can feel every single acute piece of the swing. And a lot of people who just want to go knock it around are just like not willing to put in the work, and then they wonder why they suck.
yeah. No, you're right. You just put that so blunt.
It's so blunt. I'm sorry.
No, but it's true. Like, we're back to the I want what's real. Like, I mentioned about the girls' golf in the last one. Like, I genuinely hate walking in there during the girls are out here for the state. It's not the championship, but it's the like regional level. There's like, you got to get through the first two in order to get to state.
Oh, yeah.
And so they have their first round here.
Yeah.
And I walk in there. The number of girls that break 80 is very, very low. The number of girls that break 90 is higher, but the largest chunk is over 90. I was like, come on, let's just be honest. That sucks. Okay? It's bad. They know it's bad. It's why they don't want to practice. It's why they don't go out and play. It's why when they practice, they continue to kind of suck, and so they don't really put any effort because, like, it just, if I don't really put any effort in, if I don't really get any better, then I can't really be all that upset about myself because I didn't really try. And so it's just like, I genuinely feel bad. So I love Op 36. I love what we're doing with our pre-elites. I've got more girls. I've got 12 girls and 6 boys. Wait. Pre-elites and elites. That's 18. Sorry. I've got 10 girls and 8 boys.
Okay.
Because I've got, yeah, I think that's right.
Got it.
So it's basically an even split. But I have all my pre-elites are girls. And I'm just sitting here going, I'm so excited for these young ladies because guess what? They're not going to be the ones up there anymore that can't break 90. And they're going to have several of them that are going to be able to break 80. And with my Op 36, our junior program this last year had more girls in it for the Op 36 than we had boys. And that's so exciting, not because, I think we should teach more girls than boys, but the fact that I'm giving them the opportunity to be exposed to Op 36, things that they can build genuine confidence, get stronger. They don't have to continue to be like way behind all of the other kids, like all the boys. They don't have to be embarrassed walking up there. And the same thing for the guys. Like a couple of these young men were struggling to get through Op 36, and now they're in the pre-elites and they're learning how to control their body. One of the young men who's really struggling, there's a kid, there's one of the other boys in the class is ahead of him, and he hasn't had anybody out ahead of him, and he's getting smoked, but that's motivated him to work really hard, and to watch him really finally commit to changing that motion because he's not the big dog anymore is super cool. So, like, we've got this whole structure top to bottom, and it's cracking the code. I got juniors using this practice notebook every time they practice. It's absolutely wonderful, and I've got a couple of them that are using the Arcos Golf now. And they're, I used to think, why aren't these kids getting better? And I have a number of junior golfers that, you just tend to put the attributes on the kids. Let me just hold my mic. Bummer. Sorry, y'all. But I used to put the impetus on the kids like, oh, they just work so hard. They have such a passion for the game. And while that's true, what about all the others? Have I believed in them as much as I could? Have I pushed them as hard as I could? And pushing these kids through these slow motion swings, I'm absolutely loving it. I'm going, you know what? The reason why they're going to be so good is because I'm showing them they can do stuff and they can do hard stuff. And when it comes time to play in tournaments next year, they're going to have learned how to control their bodies and be in control of their mind, because we got 12 mental success things in here that you got to check off every day. Total control of your mind, total control of your body. Like, You're not just a product of your environment.
One thing that you said is that, and one thing that I think is amazing about your juniors is that you've got peers that are doing the same things. And I know that it would have pushed me to want to be one of the best. And so my question to you is, number one, what have you seen out of those groups? And number two, if you take our example from earlier, and let's say you have those two gentlemen and me doing that putting drill again, what do you think happens the second time? Do you think anything different happens?
I'm going to answer the second question first. I think you'll see them play better in the second one, the second time around.
I would agree.
I think you'll see the adjustment.
Yeah.
Because I think all it will take will be a glance from me, be like, come on, like, let's change it. And they'll be able to do it. I'm giving them permission to be what they're great at being, which is adapters and learners. They're great. Kids are awesome at it. I'm just trying to give them the freedom to be able to do that again before they go off to college and become adults and suck at learning again. And so, humans are, chiefly a learning animal. That's what makes us so amazing. No other creature in the world learns like we learn. It's so cool. Like, we can just about do anything by and large. And so, what was the first question?
Just, it was kind of a similar
seeing.
question, but like, what have you seen from these juniors? And I know that there's very different types of people as well, but I'm curious what you've seen as far as kids who want to push themselves as hard as they can, people who are trying to play catch up because they just want to be better or they want to beat the next person. What have you observed from these? I mean, we'll call them kids.
Yeah.
What have you learned from these kids and their tendencies as far as their competitiveness?
So one of the boys in the class, like, I'm trying to get him to change a fairly significant movement in his motion, and he kind of struggled with it. We kind of get it, but not really. And then I explained to them the 1 to 3, 1 to 3 to 5 ratio of like incorrect to correct reps, and I put him side by side with the better kid, and I said, all right, for each incorrect rep you make, you could take 1 step in that direction. For each, did I say correct or incorrect rep, you make 3 steps backwards. For every correct rep you make 1 step forward. And the kid that was the better player made an incorrect rep and he had to take 3 steps back. And the kid that made the correct rep, who was the weaker player who struggled to get to change, he was the one who actually changed it. And I pointed out something to him after we stopped that exercise because he was way out ahead of the other kid. It was so cool. It's like, really? I got that wrong? I was like, yeah, I'm more critical of your error than I am of his because you're further along. Yours is actually a lot simpler. His is like a whole big, giant backswing change motion. Yours is one little thing out of your pressure in your left foot. And you couldn't change that. And once he got behind, then he kicked it in. But the kid who got, like, as soon as I put him in a challenge, I was like, you don't do well unless you have a challenge. Like, has anybody ever told you that? I was like, If you think back to, like, do you ever, like, play in things you're not really doing very well, and then when somebody puts something on the line, you turn it on?
Oh, it's so me. That's me.
Which is what happened today.
Yeah.
Right. And so not everybody thrives in that environment, but every great performer has some of that. And it has this ability to flip a switch and just go, like, kick it into another gear. And the way you learn that is to be in those opportunities in environments where you have the chance to do that. And then the other kid, once he got behind, he was like, man, I got to catch up. The problem is once you get behind, it's one correct rep only moves you forward 1.
Oh, my God, yeah.
You're 9 steps back of the kid who's made 3 correct ones. You're 12 steps back. If he keeps making correct reps, you're not going to catch him. You can't catch him. Mm-hmm. And so part of the other educating point, so it's kind of neat to see some different personalities in that environment, which is cool, kind of cool.
The personality thing is cool, and that's what I think I really observed in the putting drill too, because if you miss one, you go back, right? And so let's say that you're on the 10-foot putt. Let's say you make the 10-foot putt, you go to the 11-foot putt. You miss one, you miss the 11-foot putt, you get frustrated, so you go back to the 10-foot putt. You're still frustrated. You miss the 10-foot putt, you go back to the 9-foot putt. You're even more frustrated. And then that's what I observed from the two gentlemen is that I looked up First of all, I didn't even notice them after I got past like the 8-foot putt.
No, I
and
could
then
tell.
I looked up just to like take a breather and calm myself for a bit, and I was like, they're hitting the 4-foot putt again. And I'm like, what happened, guys? And I think that is the difference too between these high performers and not, is that what did and again, I feel it sounds like I'm pumping myself up, but I think there's really constructive thoughts to this. Is when I got to that 10-foot, I stopped for a second and I thought this 10-foot putt was actually a straight putt that was uphill. And so really all you had to do was just line it up right next to the cup and give yourself the pace. And so, but I realized that, and it was actually a freedom to me to go back and execute on that one every single time.
It's literally just a straight putt.
It's literally a straight putt. But what's the difference? The difference is how you compose yourself after you miss the 11-foot putt.
Yeah.
And that's one thing that they weren't able to do in that one situation.
Well, and, I'm looking forward to see what they put in their practice notebooks, because I'm hoping they're putting some things like, man, Jack comes into this thing, he's like way over there, and like I'm just like frustrated that he's over there and I'm not, and I'm a better golfer than he is. Why is he over there? Why am I back here? Like, I want to see those kind of, because I know it's in your head. I know you're like, why did I can't miss a 6-footer. I'm going to be even further behind. I can't miss a 5-footer. I'm all the way back here on 4. Jack's over there. He's had 3 attempts at the 9-footer already. What the heck? What happened? What am I doing wrong? But that frustration, and this is back to bringing Hank, I'm hitting like every person in this podcast that I've ever done anything with, or recently or in the past. But Hank used to say, frustration is the enemy of concentration.
Oh, it's so good, dude. We've got so many like little nuggets tonight.
I know. Frustration is the enemy of concentration. You cannot concentrate if you're frustrated. Now, and this is why Cesar Millan. This is why Cesar Millan does so well. Like, when the dog has a panic, what do the owners do? They all panic and they get frustrated. It's like he's never uncalm, and like,
dude, his heart rate doesn't go above like 70 the entire time.
I know. They one of the ones, there were these this family, and the girls, they all had dogs, and they let one of the dogs out that's bites a lot and is really dangerous. And he said, let the dog out into this like little foyer. And she's like, I just don't want you to get bit. And he looks at her, he's like, do you know who I am? Like, do you know who I am? Like, I'm not worried about getting bit. Let the dog out.
Some of the badass parts, too, is if you watch some of those episodes and he's dealing with like a Rottweiler or like a pit bull or some of that stuff, and he'll get bit, and that guy stays stone cold the entire time, and the camera will pan to his hand, and his hand is just dripping blood. And he is just there, and he's holding the dog's neck, like, which is, if you know dog behavior, it's actually a submissive thing, and they're not harming the dog. But you'll watch him. He's holding the dog's neck. His hand's just dripping blood. And then the dog calms down and like starts panting in like a playful way. And you're like, dude, what are you doing? Like, who are you?
That's why they call him the dog whisperer.
I know, yeah.
But it's just leadership.
It's leadership.
That's all it is. And
but the moral of that story is just staying calm under pressure and not letting the weight of the situation cloud your judgment, cloud your way of thinking, cloud your path to success.
Correct. And the better you get in small ways. And so this is back to the exercise for cracking the code of stopping in position 1. Is you can do that. Like, you're not going to get frustrated there. If I ask you to do the whole motion, you keep screwing it up, you're going to get frustrated there because you don't have enough control yet. And so I'm actually building confidence in the ability to control bink, 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 bink. People are like, well, that's so simple. I was like, why do you discount any success? What is that? Do you want to just be miserable and suck? Stop it. Stop telling yourself you can't do stuff. Like, you don't get so we're back to the no mulligans. So, like, we don't get redos. You can't go back and undo that.
Foreshadowing.
Yeah. You don't get to redo that negative thought. Like, you don't get to go back, erase that, and start it over. So don't start it. Don't discount it. Like, move it forward. Once it's out in the air, it's now, you spoke it and you heard it. You thought it, you spoke it, and you heard yourself say it. That is like, it's the triple threat, and you're done. 3 strikes, you're out.
One thing that
baseball. How many other things can I bring in? We're 48 minutes into this podcast.
I know we're going.
Should we go for 48 more? Jocko goes for like 3 hours.
Those are Anyway, well, that's another can of worms.
Sorry.
But one thing that my team leader brought up, and for those of you who don't know, I'm a real estate agent, and so my team leader, who's had a lot of success in real estate, he brought up this awesome nugget the other day during our team meeting, and he was talking about. I won't go into it all, but the principle is that you will never succeed if you are afraid of fear. It feels like a double negative. But if you are afraid of fear,
okay,
you will never succeed, because the people who are afraid of are afraid of failing, and therefore they're not willing. They can't fail to then learn to then be successful. It's super twisted in some ways.
No, I got you. I'm following.
But it tracks, right? Like if you're afraid of being afraid, then like you're done.
Yeah.
And it's totally normal to feel afraid. There's a lot of situations where we feel afraid, but if you're able to be afraid and realize that, okay, I'm scared. What can I do to then move out of this, to then become better, to then not be afraid?
This is the golf knowledge you didn't know you needed podcast.
Well, and I want you to check me on this, because is what I'm saying, does that make sense?
Yes,
in
does.
ways too?
It
So
does.
like I think that was really powerful for me to hear, because it's okay to be afraid, but it's how you deal with being scared.
Absolutely.
And
Being
afraid.
afraid is normal. Like, if we go into any sort of traumatic event, like, there is some fear involved. You know, like, when a doctor has a patient coming in that's coding, there's a fear they're going to lose them. There's not, like, you can't separate yourself as a human being from that. You can learn how to numb it, maybe, if you're in that environment all the time, but you're not actually fully ignoring it. Like, it's still in there. You've just learned how to let that fear be there and just keep moving.
Especially in and a lot of my analogies include baseball, but you know, you got me.
You played
you
baseball.
got me. I know. So a lot of these people, or a lot of these hitters, like let's just take for example David Ortiz, one of the most clutch hitters in the history of baseball. When the lights shine bright, he tends to turn it on and perform. But I would almost guarantee you that there is some part of his brain that is scared of performing in that way. But the difference between the people who are clutch and the people who aren't is they have a way of harnessing that fear and translating it into success.
Did you know that the hormones that are released in fear and excitement,
They're the exact
they're
same.
the same hormones?
Oh my God! Yeah, that's
now,
so
there's
great.
also some cortisol involved when you're afraid, so you have a stress hormone going. But like, they're basically the same thing. Like, I'm nervous. No, you're excited. So if you change the word and the language, it's like, if I think about getting ready to go to a concert I've wanted to go to, you get butterflies in your stomach.
Well, think about this too.
And you're not even on stage. You're just excited to go.
I know.
But it's the same thing as going to the first tee playing in a tournament. It's the exact same, like, you have the exact same physical experience.
And think about this too.
Think about it.
When and this could be a little far fetched, but I'm going to say it anyway. When you have, let's just say,
we're 52 minutes into this.
let's just say you have a very committed relationship between two people, right? And let's say you're going to ask somebody to marry you, right? If you're in a very committed relationship,
foreshadowing.
no, but if you're in a committed relationship and let's say you're going to propose to the other person, and let's say things are going well, let's say you're not just going to like surprise her off the rip like a month.
She knows,
right?
you've gone and looked at
like,
rings.
You've done it all, right? And so everybody will be like, "Man, I'm really nervous." No, like you're excited. Like I don't think you're nervous. Like she's not going to say no. You know, like you're just excited.
You've both gone. You've gotten the rings. You know you're going to get married.
Hopefully, you've had the conversations beforehand, like all that kind of stuff.
You've already talked to the parents. They're all for it.
Yeah.
But you're still like, yeah, you still have all those like.
Right. And so I think what we're doing is some of these examples are kind of far fetched, but I think they're really great because it lets the listener, you guys out there listening, it's giving you guys multiple situations to where you can then channel these emotions, because it's not just golf. It's not just golf. It's in every part of life.
Right. Well, and this is where cracking the code to me is so exciting because, you know, I've kind of already talked about how much like they suck at doing just a basic skill. And my juniors hit the ball too far when they go super slow-mo the first time. Like, everybody fails at it. I have no problem with you failing at it. What I'm so excited for you to see is even in the failure of the most basic thing, you learn how to control the most basic thing, and you learn how to control your entire environment. And guess what humans feel like when they're in control? Guess what kind of behaviors people, when they feel like they're in control, they're happy, they're positive, they're confident, they're generous, they're humble. Like, there's so many positive character traits that come when people are in control. When people feel out of control, when dogs are out of control, like a dog that feels out of control is a nervous dog, is an anxious dog, is a dangerous dog. A human that feels like they're out of control and they're nervous, like somebody who's nervous can't be trusted. Like if you give off nervous energy all the time, you're saying I'm not trustworthy. Don't. And so when a coach comes up to a player with 3 holes left to play and the player's playing great, the message you're sending, intentionally or not, the message you're sending is I don't believe in you.
And even the more message that you're sending is I don't believe in myself.
Right.
In your own head.
And so now you have both a coach and a player that don't believe that they can do it. And now you've got yourself a recipe for disaster. That's when we bring on this gentleman for later in November that we're going to do on leadership. We're going to bring up the college coaching stuff. I really think I can be a helpful tool there. But how do I want to wrap this up? I don't know. Let's just keep talking.
No, well, the one thing that I was going to say just to wrap us up here is that what I think we've encapsulated in this episode is some of the core principles of how to learn and how to gain confidence, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so if you guys are here at the Bridge or you guys are listening from out of state or out of country too, I mean, I just think there's so much power in breaking yourself all the way down so you can build yourself all the way back up. And there's little things that you can do every single day in order to do that. It just so happens that this Cracking the Code class is an organized way to do that in a specific area with golf. But I think there's many, many ways that we can all analyze our lives and figure out, even just through journaling, so what are some situations to where I feel uncomfortable, I feel scared, I feel like I can't do it. It could be excited, nervous. But one thing that I've learned throughout journaling, and this is kind of where I want to end it, is that you learn how your brain thinks when you journal, when you think about a situation that's scary, and then you can break it down to the point where you're like, oh, that's all it is? Oh, I can just fix that and I'm good to go. And I think that's what you're doing with your students.
Yeah.
And so that's how I'd want to wrap it up.
Yeah, and it's just learning how to slow down.
Yeah.
Like
what you said before about the entertainment piece, that's huge. I would encourage everybody to think more and try and consume and be entertained less.
Yes. And like Jordan Peterson talks about the 3 highest levels of thought or intellect. Is the first one is thought, because there's no checks on it. You can't remember it. There's no checks on it. There's nobody to check you on it. You can't check you on it because you're just kind of in your head. And people are like, I'm so in my head. I was like, well, write it down. You won't be in your head anymore. 2 is speaking. So podcasting, talking with other people, because you can be checked on it. Like, I can correct you if you're wrong or if I have a different opinion. So like your own opinion can be checked and held in balance and be critical and be more aware instead of be biased. And so then the third one.
And learn different ways to think too, based on the person that you're talking to.
So that's the lowest, medium, and then the highest level is actually writing.
Oh, yeah.
Because it's permanently written down. And then as you write it, you kind of look critically at it and go, no, I don't actually mean that. What do I really mean? And then you have an editor look at it, and the editor checks it. And it may just be your own journal, but you go back and you look at it. Like, it's one of the challenges is if you have people that you trust, is like if you're journaling thoughts, is to actually share that with somebody and let them look at it, because they're going to help check you on it. And you're going to have to give it to them and go, yeah, this is just actually how I feel. I'm just really upset and I need somebody to hear it. And they actually can kind of help you work through the truth of what the situation is. And just at the moment that you're handing it to somebody, there's more accountability to it. So you are more critical of what it is. And he said that's the highest level of intellect is writing.
I love it.
And I'm not talking about me writing, but like when you write, you retain, you're critical, you edit, you consume. And so just this whole process, this notebook, you can find the notebook on Amazon.
And we will have, if you're listening to this thus far, you will have already listened to an intro that we've pre-recorded talking about what this book is. So we haven't spoken a lot about it during this podcast, and that's because you guys have already heard the promo at the beginning. So as you've been thinking about this, I hope that you've figured out ways how ways and where the golfer's playbook can help you. So I think that's where we should end it right there.
I think so.
Cool.
Wow, that was a fun one.
That was a super fun
Almost
one.
got to an hour.
We almost got to an hour. Maybe by the time I do the outro, we'll be there. But yeah, thank you guys so much for listening to this episode of the Champions Playbook.
Ooh, and if you listen in,
what's that?
if you're listening in,
okay.
and you come see me, if you listen to the entire end of this thing,
Ooh, all the way to here, right
Yep.
here.
you have to come and say this one thing to me. Goose poop.
Okay.
Find me and come say goose poop if you listen all the way to the end.
That's really good. Okay. And it could be a surprise what they get?
Yep.
Okay.
I'm not going to tell you what it is.
Cool. I love it. Well, yeah, again, guys, thank you so much for listening to the Champions Playbook podcast. We are going to be rebranding here this winter. So come 2023, we might have some new stuff for you. Hopefully some new places where you guys can listen and watch and
new
interact.
logo.
A new logo, everything like that, possibly a new name. So y'all stay tuned to that. Although if you've listened to our last podcast, you might have gotten a sneak peek at some of the stuff that we are coming down the pipe with. So stay tuned for us here. Follow Scott on Instagram at @HasseyGolf. That's where you guys can really see what we're doing here. And if you guys want to come in and sit in the studio and listen to the podcast live, you're more than willing to do that as well. So we're here hopefully every other Wednesday, if not every Wednesday.
Yep.
So we'll be here for you guys to come catch the podcast. Remember to look us up on YouTube. That is going to be the Champions Playbook.
Yep.
And as well as Apple and Spotify podcasts. So if you guys are listening to this on the audio form on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, if you're on Apple, make sure you give us a 5-star and rate the podcast. Actually write something. That's awesome. It helps us when people just search golf podcasts in the search bar. And then if you're on Spotify, make sure that you follow the podcast and just keep up with us over there. So we really appreciate you guys. Thanks so much for listening to this episode of the Champions Playbook, and we'll see you on the next one. Peace.